and we're going to get started. So today we're going to talk about the continuum of care structure, COC funding process, eligible projects, participant eligibility, HUD priorities and requirements, DV bonus, the local competition timeline, and some frequently asked questions that we have seen through the years. I'm doing a brief overview of this because the assumption is that, oops, the assumption is that there are some new projects here who have never been involved with the COC before. So just very quickly, the continuum of care is developed by the Department of Housing and Urban Development in 1994. The goal is to promote the coordination of federal homeless assistance programs within communities. There are approximately 400 COCs in the USA. And the term continuum of care can refer to four things. I always feel like this meme when I'm trying to explain this process because people look at me in such confusion because we use this term interchangeably for all of these things. It can refer to our planning process. It can refer to our collection of stakeholders, which is our homeless consortium, that new projects and new agencies will have to become members of in order to move forward with the funding process. It can also refer to our geographic area, which for us is Shelby County, the entirety of Shelby County. But there are many geographic areas in the state of Tennessee and across the country. And it also can refer to the funds themselves. The actual grant that we're applying for is also the continuum of care grant. So if you hear me talking about the COC or the continuum of care, it might be talking about any of these one things. So feel free to stop me if you're confused. Moving along in the continuum of care overview, each continuum of care has a lead agency that oversees the following responsibilities. Operating the continuum of care, that is referring to the consortium, facilitating the coordinated entry process, and ensuring that we have an assessment tool to ensure a standard prioritization process for folks who are trying to access homeless services, written standards for providing assistance, designing, operating the HMIS system, which is our database that we store all of our data. It is our source of truth for data in our community, and preparing the collaborative application for the COC program funds. And for Memphis and Shelby County, Community Alliance for the Homeless is the lead agency, and we do all of these things. This is just a brief overview of how the structure works in our community. So at the top, TN 501 is the number that we refer to for that's our COC number. Memphis and Shelby County is our geographic area, and our Memphis and Shelby County Homeless Consortium, that is our collection of stakeholders. We have a governing body that runs essentially the homeless consortium, and they vote annually to have Community Alliance for the Homeless be the lead agency. And as I said before, we are the COC lead agency, the HMIS lead agency. We facilitate the coordinated entry process, and we're also the collaborative applicant to submit applications to HUD on behalf of Shelby County. We also provide logistical support and coordination of our committees that are in the consortium. So we have various committees, the COC Planning Committee, which is an overview of the consortium. We give lots of updates on funding and different priorities that come down from HUD. Healthcare Committee works on increasing healthcare resources and collaboration within our homeless response system. The HMIS Committee works on ensuring the database and data quality is translated and that agencies feel supported with the HMIS system. The Lived Experience Committee is made up of individuals with current or former lived experience of homelessness to provide advocacy, and it's like an advisory committee. The Youth Action Board is also made up of individuals with youth or with current or former lived experience of homelessness, and it's made up of 18 to 25-year-olds who are also interested in just trying to end youth homelessness and advocating for that population. And then the Youth Committee is made up of youth service providers, as well as some YAB members and community partners and institutions that serve youth to try and improve the youth homelessness aspects of our homeless response system. All right. Okay, so that was our overview of our COC as a whole. If you're new to the process, if you have any more questions about that, you can always reach out to us afterwards and we can go into more details. Now getting into the funding process. So the COC funding is the largest annual federal funding source for homeless services and programs. This is the general timeline of what happens in this process. So HUD will release the NOFO for the fiscal year, and we publish a local timeline and deadlines that has been published and it is on our website. So we'll go over that towards the end of this presentation so you can see all the local deadlines that you have to meet. Then the applicants submit new or renewal project applications in eSnaps, which is the system that we use to submit applications to HUD. If you're not in eSnaps, there are some resources towards the end of this PowerPoint on how to get started, but that is the first step in applying for funding. Once those applications are submitted to us, then we facilitate the rank and review committee, and that is made up of individuals who are part of our governing council, as well as community members that are selected to review all the application and prioritize those projects based on performance evaluation, strategic resource allocation, and community impact. They then develop a prioritization list of new and renewal projects, and that is submitted to HUD along with the big collaborative application that Community Alliance for the Homeless puts together on behalf of our community. Then HUD makes all final decisions based on project review, the community application score, and the project prioritization list. I realize there's a lot of big words and things that can be really confusing in here. So Community Alliance for the Homeless is available to answer any questions about this. And if you, as a new applicant, if you need some one-on-one time to help explain the process further, we are always available to do that. The anticipated timeline for this award is they are anticipating the awards going out by December 1st with an estimated performance start date of the 1st of 2027 and an end date of December 31st, 27. Eligible project applicants for the COC program competition include nonprofit organizations, state, local governments, instrumentalities of the state and local governments, Indian tribes, and TDHE. Public housing agencies are eligible without limitation or exclusion. For-profit entities are ineligible to apply for grants and are prohibited from being subrecipients of COC program funds. All eligible projects are then ranked by that committee that I talked about, which is made up of governing council and consortium community members. So while they're ranking those projects, there are two tiers of funding that these projects go into. The first one is tier 1, and that is more likely to be funded. It is just awarded based on passing the eligibility and a quality review and the threshold review. Any projects that don't make it into tier 1 are in tier 2, and that is based on all it's competing locally as well as nationally for funds. And so it is a little bit more challenging to be funded through tier 2. This year, our tier 1 percentage of funds is 60% of our overall amount of funds, and then 40% of the funds are in tier 2. This is a change from the last time we had this application process. It was 90% in tier 1. So the HUD is intending to make this a much more competitive NOFO with a higher percentage of projects that are going to be competing nationally for funding. There's also some new service requirements where there are prioritization for requiring services in tier 2. And you can find more information about that on page 90 of the NOFO. Once those applications, again, the ranking review process is complete, then CAF submits all the projects to HUD with the collaborative application, and then HUD makes any final determinations of funding. And at the end of the day, there's no guarantee that any or all of it will be funded. It is HUD's money, and they will decide who gets funded. Nationally, we have $4 billion in this pot of money, but we don't have our the local numbers of how much we have in our bonuses or how much our renewal amounts are. They haven't been released yet from HUD. So as soon as those get posted from HUD, then we'll have all that on our website as well. Some new things that are in this NOFO. They've set aside $104 million that must be used for new DV bonus projects. And there's a new component that will include transitional housing only as an eligible project type. Also, they have set aside at least $430 million to be used for permanent supportive housing projects or rapid rehousing projects for families with children. And up to $1.3 billion is set aside for new projects ranked in tier 2 with selection priority for new transitional housing and supportive services only projects. New projects can also be ranked in tier 1, but they would not have access to that $1.3 billion set aside that is in tier 2. And the way that we bring new funding into our community is through the reallocation of existing projects, meaning we're taking one project away and putting a new project in its place, and then bonus awards. So the COC bonus is for any project, and then the DV bonus is only for DV specific projects. And once we have those numbers, we'll be able to then determine about how many projects we'll be able to fund through the new process. Okay, so now getting into the actual grant eligible project types. So these are the project types that are available. Permanent supportive housing is long-term, not time-limited housing. Rapid housing is short-term and is up to 24 months. Transitional housing is also short-term, up to 24 months. The difference between those two is that rapid rehousing, the lease is in the name of the individual client, and the agency is just providing rental assistance. The transitional housing piece, the lease is in the name of the agency that is operating the project, and they're not providing rental assistance to an individual. They are leasing that unit themselves and then letting them stay there. So transitional housing is not considered permanent housing. It is considered temporary because there's no lease in that client's name. And then supportive services outreach, supportive services only, street outreach. And then for the DV bonus projects, transitional housing or rapid rehousing. Participants eligible to certify new projects. Permanent supportive housing projects must serve one of the following: people who qualify as homeless under paragraphs 1, 2, or 4, which is literal homelessness, at risk of homelessness, or fleeing domestic violence. And they also need to have, the head of household needs to have a qualifying disability. That definition has changed this year as well. I think that's in one of the later slides. For transitional housing, rapid housing, and supportive services only, they must serve people who qualify under 1, 2, or 4 as well. They do not have a disability requirement or a chronic homeless status requirement. For the DV bonus, DV renewal, and DV reallocation, projects must be serving individuals who are fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking, and who qualify under paragraphs 1 or 4. Every project has a 25% match that is required. It can be a cash match or it can be in-kind match. One line item that does not go into that match total is leasing. So if you have a project that has leasing dollars, the amount that is allocated to leasing in the budget does not have to be matched. You would match all the other pieces of the project, but not those dollars. When you are submitting your application, you must have that match documentation ready. And there's lots of information about match documentation and requirements in the HUD exchange, which has a lot of resources from HUD on their website. We'll send out this PowerPoint afterwards, and so all these links will be clickable, and you can have access to those resources. This one's super important. All program participants are referred through COC's coordinate entry. Everyone is required to participate in the coordinate entry system. Everyone is required to receive projects from the coordinate entry system unless it is a street outreach program. The coordinate entry system is a collaborative community response to anyone experiencing homelessness to provide streamlined and equitable access to housing interventions for people experiencing homelessness. It contains access points for populations who are assessed and prioritized based on vulnerability and eligibility. So basically, anyone who is encountering individuals who are needing services, they can connect them to an access point. Those individuals can then, if they are eligible, they're assessed and are placed on a list based on their level of vulnerability. And then our team, our coordinate entry team, takes those individuals and matches them to a project that fits their qualifications and who has openings. So it's a streamlined process to ensure that the most vulnerable individuals are being served first, and someone who walks off the street who might not be as vulnerable as somebody who's been waiting for a spot doesn't get a spot before that person who might have chronic health issues or has been sleeping outside for 3 weeks. So there's more information about coordinate entry on our website, but this is a requirement. Everyone has to participate in coordinate entry. If you are funded through this program, you cannot just accept people off the street into your housing program. They must be matched through the coordinated entry system. Okay, new project requirements. So a full submitted application in eSnaps. There are other forms in eSnaps that need to be submitted as well. And we are also, we may pull in new projects for a brief interview with the rank and review committee. It would be no more than 15 minutes and you would have notice in advance, but it is just to ask any questions for some of the new projects. Sometimes there are some gaps in what we're looking for that we've seen in the past. And so we added this interview piece. And so the rank and review committee may reach out to you to ask you to jump on to answer a few extra questions. And then for the DV bonus project, there is a supplemental application that is usually at the end of the in eSnaps. I don't have access to it yet because HUD has not released the applications yet in eSnaps. So I can't show you what that looks like. But as soon as we have access to that, then we will also be posting that on our website, and we'll send out an email newsletter blast to let everyone know that the applications have been released and there's more information up on our website. All right. Any questions? Sorry, I'm like talking so much. Anyone have any questions so far? All right, I'm gonna keep going. If you do have a question, you can throw it in the chat as well, and we will get to that. So HUD priorities and requirements. This is some basic threshold requirements that is just part of the eligibility criteria. There is a much larger list of threshold requirements in the NOFO starting on page 58, and you will see new project threshold requirements, renewal project threshold requirements. So be sure and check that out to make sure that your organization is eligible. But essentially, you have to have an accounting financial management system that satisfies HUD requirements. For example, you need to have an accountant and some fiscal controls. You can't have any outstanding delinquent federal debts. You can't have any debarments, suspensions from doing business with the federal government. You need to disclose any violations of federal criminal law potentially affecting the federal award. You need to agree to participate in coordinated entry in HMIS if you're funded. You need to document the required 25% match. You need to be a member of the Memphis and Shelby County Homeless Consortium. You need to have a current Live, Give, Mid-South profile, which is facilitated by the Community Foundation. You need to be a 501c3 designation or a unit of government or a faith-based organization. And you need to have a UEI number and complete a SAM registration. So if you haven't done that, I definitely suggest getting started with that piece. And as I said, you can check out the rest of the threshold requirements starting on page 58 of the NOFO. In addition to all those threshold requirements, your organization must certify affirmatively to the following. The project applicant will not engage in illegal racial discrimination, and you will not operate drug injection sites or safe consumption sites. You will not knowingly permit the use or distribution of illicit drugs on property, or knowingly distribute drug paraphernalia. This is consistent with the objectives line in section 3B of the NOFO. I definitely suggest looking into this before you move forward with your application and make sure that your organization can agree to these things. The certification is not a requirement that program participants must be sober in order to receive assistance. Just to be clear, it is not a requirement that they participate in treatment in order to receive assistance or be evicted or exited from assistance for a first-time violation of a drug-related policy or lease requirement. But you do have to commit to doing those things at your agency. Also, if you have had a COC-funded project before, I know this is a new project info session, but if in the past, 3 years ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, you've had a COC-funded project before, you must have had a satisfactory capacity, drawdowns, and performance for existing grants funded under the COC program. We must have had timely reimbursement of subrecipients if that was applicable, regular drawdowns, and timely resolution of any monitoring findings. If you are a new project who's never had a COC funded project before, then you don't have to worry about that. You must also demonstrate your ability to meet all timeliness standards. HUD has been very clear that they reserve the right to deny funding requests for a new project if the request is made by an existing recipient that HUD finds to have significant issues related to capacity, performance, unresolved audit, or monitoring findings related to one or more existing grants, or does not routinely draw down funds from ELOCs, which is the system that we draw down our money from at least once per quarter. HUD also reserves the right to withdraw funds if no annual performance report is submitted on the prior grant. The annual performance report is part of like a closeout process. So if you've had a grant before, that's like the final step in it's your basic, like the report that you have to submit to them. So if you didn't do that, which I don't know that there's any agencies in our community that did not submit that, then they are reserving the right to not fund you again. And there's a lot more criteria depending on the project type that you're selecting as your new project, and all of that can be found on page 63 of the NOFO. These are also the project priorities. The HUD priorities. So when you're writing your application, I definitely recommend reading the priority section of the NOFO, which is on page 29. It goes into a lot of detail about these 8 priorities. And so when you're writing your narratives for the application, we recommend trying to include as much of this as possible in there because this is what they're looking for. And there's a lot more information on them starting on page 29. Some changes from previous NOFOs. Tier 1, as I mentioned before, is at 60%. YHDP projects are also renewing competitively. YHDP is the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, and that is funding for all of our youth housing programs. This is the first year that they will be looped in with all of the other projects in the rank and review process. There's a big focus on transitional housing and supportive services only. This hasn't been the case in the past, so this is the first NOFO that we've really had these, we're able to apply for some of these things. And then PSH projects that are not dedicated to chronically homeless households or designated as dedicated plus may serve people with disabilities who meet categories 2 of the homeless definition, in addition to categories 1 and 4. Previously, you've had to serve literally homeless individuals through PSH programs, but they have added category 2. Also, they are reinterpreting the term self-sufficiency. So optimizing self-sufficiency among homeless individuals and families is one of the stated purposes of the CSC program. This has long been understood and operationalized, that's a hard word, as the ability to live independently and to maintain housing with or without assistance. HUD is now interpreting this to mean the ability to meet basic needs, including a place to live without public or private assistance. So basically, taking away that you're meeting self-sufficiency if you are still using assistance. And then this is also adding to that, HUD reserves the right to deny a project. They have expanded what can be considered in their risk review of applications to include information from public sources like news reports and new subjective criteria, such as the ability to promote self-sufficiency. It has, for the first time, made the results of the risk review alone a valid reason for denying funding. In addition to the results of the threshold criteria, the merit review, and the risk review, HUD may consider additional factors that provide HUD broad authority to reject otherwise qualified projects for subjective reasons, such as the likelihood that the proposed project will result in the benefits expected. They are increasing the number of reasons that they can reject your projects if they want to, and they're very subjective. This is a new piece that is in this NOFO. So be sure and read the NOFO multiple times. That's my best advice. Make sure that your agency is meeting all of the requirements for the projects. There's also new national priorities. So HUD is very focused on treatment and service participation requirements, civil commitment, and public safety. The merit criteria provide significant points for COCs that prioritize both voluntary and involuntary treatment and promoting public safety. So the merit criteria is pretty focused on the collaborative application. So this is something that as a community we'll have to contribute to. And any project that is already serving clients and providing treatment, we would include those in our large collaborative application for the community. Also, effective October 1st, any housing lease with COC funding or for which rental assistance payments are made will be required to meet this national standards for the physical inspection of real estate. This is a new inspection process that is starting in October. We've had a different inspection process up until this point, so this is something that is new in this NOFO. And this year, transitional housing is an eligible project type for the DV bonus. HUD is not accepting joint THRH projects for DV bonus this year, as it has in the past. And then new transitional housing projects must provide individualized services that will result in 20 hours per week of engagement in services, activities, or employment for all program participants. This is that service requirement that I was talking about earlier, with the exception of those who are over the age of 62, meet the definition of handicapped in the regulations, or have a developmental disability. I had mentioned earlier that they have changed the definition of disability, and it is smaller than what it was previously. So it does not include people with HIV or AIDS or whose primary diagnosis is substance use disorder. Also, if you are applying for a street outreach project, you must demonstrate a history of or plan for partnering and cooperating with first responders and law enforcement. Just a note, new permanent supportive housing projects and new wraparound housing projects do not have the service participation requirements. All right. I'm almost done talking. Sorry for talking so much. If you have any questions, please jump in. DV bonus section. So the domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking new projects is defined as a new DV project created through the DV bonus or through the reallocation of renewal DV projects. HUD is making at least 52 million set aside for domestic violence projects, and the minimum amount for a DV bonus grant is $50,000. DV bonus and DV reallocation may only be used to create new wrap rate housing and transitional housing projects. The supplemental application that I was talking about earlier, that is where you would describe as a DV bonus applicant your experience serving individuals and families of people experiencing trauma or a lack of safety related to or fleeing or attempting to flee domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, or stalking, and your ability to house survivors and meet safety outcomes. So there is a whole other application that goes in addition to your regular application with the DV side. So if you're thinking of applying for a DV bonus project, please reach out to us and we can help walk you through that process once the actual applications are open. And I'll give you Haley's email. She's the new Youth and Special Populations Director, and she's the person to reach out to if you are thinking of applying for a DV bonus project. So now I'm getting into our local competition timeline. These are the very important dates that you will have to follow. So today's June 12th. We have 3 virtual sessions today, back to back, 9 to 11, 10 to 9 to 10, 10 to 11, and 11 to 12. Then on the 18th this month, we'll have our eSnaps information session. That is also a virtual session. That is for how to set up your project in eSnaps. It is not for how to create a username in eSnaps. You should do that ahead of time. There's a very specific presentation that we're going to be going over in eSnaps, and you should come with a login to eSnaps so that you can walk through the process of opening up the applications in there with us. If you do not have an eSnaps login and can't figure it out and need help, reach out to us separately before that meeting, and we'll try and meet with you to help you get started in that. But I do recommend doing that today if you have not done that, just so you're ready to go. July 1st, the APRs are going to be pulled for current projects. That doesn't apply to new projects. And consumer surveys are due on the 15th. That also does not apply for new projects. We'll have 2 in-person eSnaps and narrative writing TA. This is where you can bring your computer to our offices, and we will help you with your, if you're having any technical issues with eSnaps, or if you would like some feedback on your application. We cannot write your application for you in any way, but we can say, here's HUD priorities, and here's some ways that you might be able to incorporate what you're trying to do better with those. And we can help you with any documents or things like that that you're uploading to make sure that they're appropriate. Excuse me. On the 29th of July, we have scorecards sent to current projects that does not apply to new projects. And then the deadline to submit to CAF is 3:00 p.m. on July 31st. There's no exception to that deadline. If you miss that deadline, you will not be included in the project. If you submit your application at 3:01, you will not be included in and not be reviewed. There's absolutely no exception to that. So it has to be submitted in eSnaps by that deadline. And then if you are submitting a DV bonus project, you will also need to email Haley the supplemental application and the database agreement before 3 p.m. as well. I realize that's an extra step for the DV bonus projects, but those will have to be in before 3:00 as well, or your project will not be considered. This timeline is on our website, and you can access that. It is currently up there right now. If you have any questions about that, please reach out to us. And then as we move in August, August 6th and 7th, our rank and review committee will be meeting to review all the projects. Every project that applies, whether they are approved to move forward or not, will be notified by the 10th via email. On the 17th, that's the deadline for any projects that are rejected. You will have to submit an appeal if your project is rejected by Monday, August 17th at 10 a.m. to Myletta. Her email's right there, and it'll also be at the end of the slide. I would not waste the last minute, because if your application comes in at 10:01, it will not be considered. And then we will post the collaborative application and the prioritization list on our website by August 21st at the latest. And then we will be submitting the full application and all of the projects to HUD by August 26th. Excuse me, sorry. All right. Any questions about timeline before I move on to frequently asked questions? We are almost done. All right. So here's some frequently asked questions that we've seen through the years of doing this. How are new project applications submitted? All applications are submitted in eSnaps. Here's the eSnaps toolkit. Here's the place you can log in. There are guides to getting started in eSnaps. Once HUD releases the detailed instructions, there's also eSnaps guides that are specific to this NOFO. They're just not released yet. So as soon as we have those will also be on our website as well. And as a reminder, we have 3 opportunities to get assistance with eSnaps: June 18th, June 17th, and nope, the last 2 should be July 17th and 20th. Sorry about that. Why are applications not submitted directly to HUD? HUD requires communities to come together to submit COC applications to stimulate community-wide planning and coordination of programs. We have local competition so that we can do a preliminary review of all projects, make sure that they meet those threshold requirements, and then make recommendations to HUD. And that's what the rank and review does. They do that prioritization piece, and Community Alliance for the Homeless facilitates that whole process. And then we submit all those applications to HUD on behalf of everybody. You can go to our website for more information as HUD releases it. That will be linked in here as well. It's also caf.org. And then the HUD Exchange is where a bunch of resources are, especially on the COC page. That's where they'll put any information related to this application. And if you have a question about the NOFO, can you ask HUD? Absolutely. Please ask HUD. You can also ask us, but it's their application. So if your question's hard or something that we don't know the answer to, we'll have to ask HUD anyway. So this is the email that you send any questions to. You're welcome to submit questions to them. They do kind of take a long time. So I would say if you read through the NOFO as soon as possible, if you haven't already, get your questions and submit them ASAP, because sometimes they can take a couple weeks to respond. And what are my next steps now that I've attended the new project information session? We recommend that you read the NOFO once, twice, 3 times even, because there's a lot of information in there. Go to eSnaps, the eSnaps resources listed in the frequently asked questions slide earlier. Create a login and a profile for organization. You can do that now, even though the applications have not opened in eSnaps. You can get your applicant profile updated and ready to go, so that when the applications do open, you can go in there and get started immediately. You won't have to wait and have less time with the applications. Make sure you're checking out our website for updated information. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter, because that's where we'll also send out updates and direct people back to our website for any things that come out. And please reach out with any questions anytime. Here's our contact information. My name is Stephanie. I'm all the way at the bottom right there. Myletta and Kirsten are your COC team. They're the people to contact for any COC projects. Haley and Natalie are the youth and special populations team. They're the people to contact for any youth projects or DV bonus projects. You can really contact anybody and we'll get you to the right person, but that is the people to reach out to.